Okay. Hi there, YouTube. Hi, this is Dr. Boz, and I am coming to you live on Sunday nights like I usually do. I have these goofy headphones on tonight because I am trying to take feedback from people saying the hardest part for my broadcast so far has been that the quality of the sound has not been great. So I got this fancy microphone. Actually, I've had the microphone, which is really even more embarrassing because I did my own audiobook. When I recorded the book Any Way You Can, there were certain requirements that you had to have for recording a book, and this microphone was one of them. So I don't have any excuse. I've had the equipment. I just didn't like these goofy things on my head. And I tried to do them without earphones, but that was even more of a disaster. So I'm just really happy that we're live and hopefully the sound is amazing. I have a super awesome treat for you tonight. First of all, there's a couple things that I hope you notice that are going to be a little different. I have a special guest tonight, and then I'm going to interview her. We are going to use this as a teachable moment for patients and for people on how can you be a ketogenic how can you use a ketogenic diet to improve your health? We're picking a particularly interesting patient to follow, and I have been very mindful about selecting the patient because I think she'll provide lots of teachable moments, but she's also highly entertaining. So this is going to be fun. Before I get started on that, there's a couple things I want to share. So if this works, I'm going to show you a slide. Hopefully you're seeing a slide right now. And that slide should say Metabolic Health Summit, which is this summit at the end of the month. I'm super excited about. This is the most important metabolic or keto summit of the year. If you read my book, Any Way You Can, Dom D'Agostino and many of his people, this is a picture of many of the people that are going to be at this conference, giving lectures, teaching people like me and my patients and health coaches, how do we take the science from the edges of where it's at right now, which is we are a few years into really unpacking the human studies on a ketogenic diet in this generation of medicine. And how do we not spend 30 years before it gets to the front lines? And it's conferences like this. So I just want to say this conference is meant for anybody who's interested in a ketogenic diet. The website is metabolichealthsummit.com. And if you want 15% off, I take no commissions from this. This is just my way of supporting I want this summit to be sold out. I want anybody who's interested in a ketogenic diet to be invited to this. So it's Dr. Bosworth, MHS for Metabolic Health Summit, and you get 15% off your ticket price. Just to kind of go through the times, I think this is the one where it says the date. Yes, it is in Los Angeles, actually Long Beach, but that's right near Los Angeles, and January 31st through the 3rd. I would love to meet you there. So if you are going to be at this, please, please, please come introduce yourself to me. And I can't tell you, this is the one place that I get a babysitter for the kids. I make sure I've got the time to go. I pause my life to go support the folks on the front lines who are doing the research so that doctors like me and my colleagues can have the support we need to learn about the ketogenic diet. All right. So this brings me to the most important part of this evening, which is an introduction of someone that I hope to be on multiple times on my show because she is super special to me. And she has been in my life. She became my patient in 2007 years ago now. So I think it might have been 12, maybe somewhere around there. And I'm going to let her tell a little bit more of the story, but I'd like to introduce you to Lachlyn. So hopefully that's what you're seeing on your screen right now is Lachlyn.
Hi.
She has a fancy headset on her head too.
Gaming.
Yes, we are both mom boys. I have 3 sons. She has 2. And so the headsets around her house were multiple and negotiated away from the kids to say, no, mom's going to be on this YouTube channel talking about how we're going to wreck your life in the next few weeks as mom's diet changes.
right?
I'm super excited about having Lachlyn on our team and inviting her to share her experience. So the first thing I was going to start with, Lachlyn, is I'd just like you to share what you recall about when you first came to see me and why did you seek out a physician 7 years ago?
Well, hi everybody. I was doing Miss Annette's hair, and I had a lot of things going on. I was going to the bathroom all the time. My eyes were like good, and then my eyes were bad, and then they were okay, and then they were good and bad, and all over the place. I think I had lost maybe about 80 pounds that year.
Wow.
So I thought I had magically reset my metabolism somehow, but it turns out that's not what happened. It was a crushing blow, but I had gotten a piercing in my ear. It wouldn't heal. There was just all sorts of things that I was like, something's not normal and right, and I don't know what it is. So I went and Annette said, just come see me. Just come see me. And I
Yeah,
did.
exactly. I can remember when you came too. I was sitting in the chair and I can't turn off my like across the room. Something's not right. And the way she's talking, she's in trouble. It's not just, oh, 80 pounds is falling off your body. Oh, by the way, you're going to the bathroom all the time. Oh, by the way, that little infection in your ear didn't heal. Um, Something more is happening. And I think it was I'm just gonna brag on me for a second. I re like, oops. So I sent you to the lab, and when I sent you to the lab, do you remember what I ordered?
A bunch of blood tests,
Right.
and then you called me with the results, and you said something like you're like diabetic blood meticulate. I'm like, so what's that? How do we
Yeah.
get rid of it?
It was great. Yes. When I sent in the lab tests, as a physician, when you look at labs, that's the puzzle of getting the answers and using 21st century to say, where do her symptoms meet the lab tests? And I remember thinking on the very first test, should I order antibodies? Meaning your symptoms of diabetes. I didn't have a question that you had diabetes. I had a question on whether or not it was a type 1 diabetic or a type 2 diabetic. Do you remember the difference on how you figure out if somebody's type 1 or type 2?
Type 2, your pancreas still shoots off insulin, but
Mhm.
you are just not making very good lifestyle choices. Type 1, your pancreas has said bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We're not doing anything anymore.
Right, absolutely. Good job. You totally remember. So I ordered antibodies because in a type 1, and you were in your early 30s, you showed up at the office and you had these symptoms, and type 2 diabetes can show up like that, but it was very strange. So I sent off the antibodies to say, if your body has attacked your pancreas and your immune system accidentally thought your pancreas was the enemy and just shot down every one of the cells that's supposed to make insulin, and those little cells said bye-bye. The antibodies were really high, and your labs were very telling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. And, when you tell somebody you have diabetes, I think the first thing you ask me is, "Do you think am I gonna have to poke my finger?" And I said, "Oh, dear, you're gonna have to poke more than that because you don't make insulin. You're gonna have to, um, actually inject insulin." And you kinda lost
And
it.
I'm like terrified of needles. So this
Oh,
was
oh, it was. I remember just thinking, "Oh, how am I gonna help her through this?" Because it was a lot. It's a lot to handle in one visit, and of course, my brain's going like a million miles an hour, and you're just saying, "What do you mean it's more than poking my finger?" I remember, almost like yesterday saying, "No, no, 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 you're gonna be fine, but you might wanna come into the clinic tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that because I don't think I can tell you all this in one visit and not give you a nervous breakdown."
right.
Mhm.
Right.
Right. Mhm. Well, so, do you remember, just kind of what happened that next year as far as your type 1 diabetic? What did you have to learn?
I had to learn how to count carbs
Mm-hmm.
like a professional. There's carbs in so many things that I had no idea. I learned how to do carb to insulin ratios and counting down blood sugar if I'm over and under, and that hormones play a lot of role in my blood sugar. My mood plays a lot in my blood sugar. You become a lot more aware of what's going on in your body when you are having to do all that and taking your numbers and the fact that if you mess around and don't pay attention to what you're doing, you can kill yourself.
So
like if you just don't do anything, you're gonna probably die. That's
right.
terrifying.
So it was, and I think you learned what a long-acting insulin is, what a short-acting insulin is, how we're going to use those together. It's a whole lesson in the biology class that you wanted to sleep through high school, but it's like twice as hard, and now it's about saving your own life.
Right.
So lots and lots to be thankful for, but that you live in the 2012 then, and we have all the tools to help you. But boy, did it add to your need for a doctor and need for just understanding your own metabolism. So what happened to that 80 pounds in the next year?
Well, I think from when I got diagnosed, probably that was like end of August, beginning of September. I feel like by the time Christmas had rolled around, I probably put like 30 to 40 of it back on, like that quick.
Right.
Just because my cells could like actually take on the carbs I was eating instead of just basically peeing them out before.
Exactly. That's exactly what they were doing. Yes, your body didn't make insulin, and without insulin, you can't get the sugar to go from the circulation into the cells where the mitochondria can burn it. So, just out of curiosity, do you remember me talking about ketoacidosis at that time?
Yes.
Do you remember what that was about? It's okay if you don't. I'll help you.
That if my it's the bad kind of ketoacidosis.
Right. Yeah.
Where there's a good keto and a bad keto, and when your blood sugar is really high, it's the bad keto. That's what I remember.
Yay, that's good enough. That's exactly right. We didn't check your blood ketones. We could have, but one of the things that was important for me to educate you on was, hey, your blood sugars are super, super high, and the way your body is finding an answer to survive is it's surviving off of fat. And that's where that 80-pound weight loss came from, is you were peeing out the glucose. Every sugar cell or sugar molecule was passing right through your kidneys. And your body said, hey guys, we need to still live. There's a whole bunch of resources stored over in the fat department. Let's use those.
Lots of resources. Lots and lots of resources.
2 kids later, you're like, yeah, we stored some up for this event.
Right. You just don't get to like tell it where to take it off.
Yeah, right. No, right. Uh-huh. So let me show you. Is it okay if I show the labs that we over the last few years, and just let folks tell you about what you tell the folks about when you started, and then some of the journeys you've used to treat. Maybe we should just start with that. Let's have you tell people you went from injecting insulin that first year, and then you're like, this bites. I'm checking my sugars multiple times a day. What other options are there? What did we do next?
You got me on an insulin pump, which is great technology, and it's really amazing. I had it for what, probably 3 years, maybe? I don't know, 3 or 4 years. I just didn't have better control because of my crazy life. Not because the insulin pump doesn't work. It's just, it was dripping all the time, and then I would go hours and hours and hours without eating, and then I would crash, and then I would overcorrect to give myself more medicine to crash. It was just constant all over the board. So that, and it's also very expensive for me since I, have my own insurance and stuff. So that became a factor of, is what I'm paying really managing this better? And it was not. So then we went back to shots.
Yeah, it was really impressive. Like, I put together just a picture of the average sugars you had with something called triglycerides, and I'm gonna show those on the screen right now. And if you look, I think my mouse shows up on YouTube. I don't know, but I hope it does. This 300, can you see my mouse, Lachlan?
Negative.
Oh, okay. Well, that 300 over there at the beginning of 2012 is when you were first diagnosed. Your average sugars was running over 300. That slammed down to 170 and then up to 175, then down to 150 happens in those first couple of years, and that's what it took in order to qualify for that insulin pump. I then passed you off to the endocrinologist, and that's why you see 4 to 5 years of no lab testing because another doctor was managing the insulin pump and those numbers. But tell us why you're no longer on an insulin pump. What happened that you said, "That is just not gonna fit with my life?"
Well, which part?
Yeah, I mean, what was it that was it was hard, right? Like, insulin pump sounds like great technology, but there was a lot more to it than just saying, "Oh, now the machine's gonna do everything."
Well, right. There's, probably one of the bigger things for me is I was 32 when I got diagnosed. So I hadn't lived my whole life being diabetic. And I know it sounds strange, but it just didn't, I never liked having something attached to me. I
Mhm.
didn't
No, it's
like it.
real.
I didn't like having it always attached to me. I'm sure if you grow up as a kid having it, it just becomes second nature. But I didn't enjoy that part. You know, they had just come out with the sensors when I got my pump, and we tried that. There was a lot of recalculating involved, so I was poking myself more instead of less, and I'm like, what's the point?
Right. Oh, I
And
remember
so
that. Every time
per
the
usual
every time the
Lachlyn world, when things
Mhm.
get like, this is overwhelming, then I say,
Goodbye.
that
Yes, you
was
do.
fun.
Yes, and you did that very gracefully in, only a fashion that Lachlan can do. All right, so when I started talking to you about keto, a couple of years ago, I said, "There's a way for you to have." So let's just share with everybody. Now you've had a type 1 diabetes for 7 years. You've been through the gamut. You've said, "Yep, I inject my long-acting insulin. I tried the pump. The technology is cool, but it's really an incredible, intense life about monitoring your sugar 5 to 6, 7 times a day when that pump was on. Now it's down to 2 to 3 times a day, and you're really good about, here's how many carbs I ate, here's how much insulin I had." But tell people today, what's your biggest fear about being a type 1 diabetic?
My biggest fear, really honestly, going blind.
Yeah, going blind, and even, like, today, if something was gonna hit you today, what would screw up your life is if the sugars went really low, right?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's terrible, right? I mean, explain how your whole world stops when that happens, right?
It's like your soul is shaking and it's awful. And you're hot and you're cold and you don't know what to do. And I do hair. So my biggest annoyance of the day is if I'm in the middle of a haircut, because it's not like you can just say, "Oh, my sugar's low and let me fix that real quick," and then we'll just bounce right back into life. It's an ordeal. You
Mhm.
feel it coming on, you start to try and treat it. Takes you a little bit to get through it, and then you kind of feel like you got hit by a bus the rest of the day.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and it takes probably between 15, 20, 30 minutes from when I feel it coming on to start to be like, okay, I'm okay again.
Mm.
By the time you go through the whole process of going low and back high, and it's um it's annoying. And so again, when I find things annoying, I find a way to not have them happen to me. So I ride my blood sugar high, and Annette does not appreciate that.
You are so right. Yes, so her sugars over the last little while have been high, and, despite, your doctor saying, "Hey, girl, this is really gonna affect you long term," you're about, "Yeah, but I gotta get through today. Come on, help me through today." And as much as it sounds short-sighted, you do a good job. You know your carbs, you know where they come from. And when I would quiz you about, "Okay, which booze is the best? you get the story right. When I would tell you which fruit is the best, you'd say none of them are good for me. You'd say, and watching to say those really do have carbs in them that when I was writing the book, I felt like I was explaining to the world what it would be like to be a type 1 diabetic. And you really are it is a testimony to say, hey, she doesn't get to choose what day she's going to follow the diet. She really does have to just stand here the rest of the year. So tell me what you wh- tell me about the keto diet. What do you know about it?
That it's high fat, low
High fat.
carbs, medium
Mm-hmm.
protein.
Atta girl.
That's about it.
Yes.
And that you can have a lot of bacon.
Yes, you can have a lot of bacon. Yes, you can. Very good. So, when I was starting my keto group, it's now been a couple years where I do a keto group for my little community. And if people want to know about it, they show up and I teach them about it for free on Wednesday mornings. And um, yeah, how long have I been asking to come to the keto group?
A while.
Yeah. So this is a different option because Lachlyn's life is pretty busy. So we're gonna say, all right, it. So let's just tell the people. I mean, I think we have over 400 people watching right now. Tell them what attracts you to the ketogenic diet. What makes you want to try this?
I would really like to not have to take insulin anymore, or a very, very little amount. Again, I don't like to poke myself. Insulin's not free. Basically, it's what is insulin? Is it synthetic?
Yeah, it is made, but it's made identical to our insulin. And
Right.
then we use the long-acting insulin and then the short-acting insulin. And the short-acting one really is very much similar to what our own insulins are. Unfortunately, when you have a pancreas that works, it squirts out lots of little micro doses in response to how your body's doing. And what you try to do when you kind of become the nanny of your pancreas, trying to figure out what to do, you respond to food, and then you respond to what your blood sugars are. But the only way you can do that is to keep poking yourself.
Mhm.
So when you look at, your sugars of an average of 200 blood sugar as a type 1 diabetic, it's not uncommon for them to say, "Doc, this is just where I hang out." Um, so what motivates you to want to be on a ketogenic diet?
Um, well, I could obviously afford to be in better shape. I'd like to lose some pounds, of course.
Mhm.
I got two little boys. Well, they're not little anymore. They're 16 and 13.
Got it.
Jules he's a sophomore, so only got a couple more years to influence him and make some good choices. And the other side of their DNA also has diabetes in the works everywhere. So, I want them to have good lifelong goals of how to eat better and make better choices, just because they're getting the diabetes from like both sides, and it's
Hmm.
not fun to deal with. I don't wish it on my worst enemy, so I don't want my boys obviously to get it. So I
Yeah.
want to just set some new good health habits here for them.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And when you look at the difference between somebody saying, I want to lose a little weight for the purpose of, looking better, or feeling a little healthier, and then you add into the complexity of somebody who's got type 1 diabetes, and guess what? Your children now have that life to watch and say, look at how hard mom has to try just to keep her body doing what mine does automatically. And then to know that type 2 diabetes runs in their family, yeah, if you can say, hey, we're going to prevent this, here's a diet that could stop what's going on right now in your system. And when I look at trying to set expectations for people, I don't try to I think you've been around me long enough to know that I don't sugarcoat this. Do I
No,
think
but she also really is good at loving you where you're at too. And like, that's
absolutely.
okay. That's okay. You messed up
Yeah.
again.
gonna put
I
you on
still love
YouTube
you.
and then we'll see how well you do. There's gonna be a bunch of people watching and saying, "Lachlyn, look at how much better you're doing. You just needed an audience, sweetheart."
An accountability group.
Yeah, 100,000 or something, right?
Right, no big deal.
No pressure.
Mhm.
Right. So, when we start a ketogenic diet, and you're type 1, there's a few things that I like to go through. Number 1, do I ever think you'll get completely off of insulin? And the answer is no. But do I have colleagues out there who are type 1 diabetics that are physicians? Some of the first people that I met and interviewed that are type 1 diabetics, and where do they use, how do they manage their diabetes? And they get away with a few units of long acting insulin every day, and that's it. The rest of it, they live a ketogenic life and they don't, their sugars are controlled. Their sugars are an average of 80, and they don't get low because their body is so easy to pull in those fat molecules and keep the body from getting too low. And so I want to put out the most hopeful scenario for you, which is you have, it sucks to get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. It is a stinker to do it at 32 and then say, wait a minute, I was supposed to be having this great decade, and now I've spent the whole 7 years playing with blood sugars, testing, untesting, using devices, getting it off, figuring out insurance companies and how to get it covered, because the cost has been, I mean, you run your own business, you don't live work for some major corporation and fit into the average for everybody. Your insurance is on your own, and it's been incredible how well you've tried to balance the cost of that. And then knowing that you've got some kids at risk, that this is the time to say, all right, let me show you how to do this. And by the way, a few people are going to be watching, so
No big deal.
no big deal. All right, so we're going to start with a couple of things. I'm gonna show off some slides here, and I'm just going to go through a few teachable things. I don't know if I'm going to be skilled enough to put this up on a flash back and forth with you. I don't know. Maybe I can figure that out. So hang tight. All right, there's your cute kiddos. But what I wanted to do is go down here and show you these guys. So these are glucose. You know lots about them. But I like to point out that sometimes you have some high moods from glucose, but more often you feel sluggish, and you really end up with this, when it goes up and down, you end up with quite the inflamed and irritated body. That we know that one of the reasons that you've really struggled to lose weight since you've been diagnosed is that you have high sugars, but you also have to use insulin to cover up what those sugars can't do with insulin. And as long as that insulin is as high as yours is, your fat cells are going to stay locked. Excuse me. Without the decrease in insulin, we can't lose weight. We can't get your body back into a higher metabolic state, and you're going to still fight going up and down with those with that glucose. So these are your new best friends. These are ketones, and ketones are they are morsels of energy that come from fat. They have a much longer life of energy, closer to 4 hours than as compared to a glucose, which only has about 30 minutes to an hour when in the circulation. When you look at the circulation that I'm hoping for, I want you in something called nutritional ketosis. And if you think back to when you were first diagnosed, you would have had hundreds of those glucose molecules floating around. Remember that your average blood sugar was 300 at the time. So I think when you were in my office, it was over 400.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not go back there, huh?
They were like, here's the end of the chart. You're off that.
I think we did do that. I'm like,
Yeah, you did. I was like, awesome.
how do I get through that? This is really scary.
I got to go back to work. Am I okay?
Would you hurry up? You're running behind. You're taking an awful lot of time with me. Come on. Like, you need to sit still, sweetie. We got some work to do. But what I also want you to know is that at the time, when people have type 1 diabetes that's out of control, you probably had quite a few ketones circulating as well. You were well adapted to ketones at the time, but that's the dangerous part where people get Julian Michaels in the last couple of weeks has been riffing on how bad the ketogenic diet is. Excuse me. And one of the things she said is, "Oh, it's dangerous. You could die from those ketones." And what she's talking about is the scenario that you were in when you first were diagnosed is that those ketones can be too high. But what we want them to do is, if you can see this picture where the insulin's getting doused by those ketones, is that, the pain, the inflammation, and the rate that your body repairs is really what I care about in you. Your body is going to need these three, Mr. Fat, who's our superhero here, with the ketones. And I know that's a boy, but that's all I had for the preparing of these slides to say, no, we want your body energized, we want it fit, and we want the inflammation to continue to decrease, not increase. So, having said that, I want you to think about when you have carbs in a day, how many carbohydrates do you typically take in right now in a day?
In a day, I'd say probably just depends. Like breakfast, usually not much.
Mm-hmm.
But then for dinner, probably somewhere between 30, 40, 50,
Okay.
somewhere in that area.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends what I have for lunch. Sometimes it's dumb ideas because we're ordering out at the salon. And then sometimes I'm like, look at, I brought a salad.
Right. Well, and looking at your history, that that reduction in carbohydrates happened over. I mean, you really have done a better job over the last couple of years of cutting back the carbs and knowing where the carbs come from. But I think the last time we talked, you said somewhere between 50 and 70 carbs a day isn't not uncommon for you.
No, yeah, oh, absolutely.
And where do you think the biggest source of those carbohydrates comes from? What food do you think is your highest carb intake?
Probably like potatoes of some
No.
sort. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, or bread or pasta. I mean, it just kind of depends, but those would be usually where the carbs are coming from in a meal.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other day when you were talking, you said bread isn't your biggest temptation usually.
No, it's not, but it adds up fast.
It does.
You know, like, I mean, like pizza will send my blood sugar through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I do that. I do this other consult with somebody who is a keto cook. And unlike you, she doesn't have type 1 diabetes. She's had lost about 50 pounds with the ketogenic diet, and she knows way more about cooking than I ever did. I need to hook up you with her because she would teach you how to make pizza out of fathead dough, which is mozzarella cheese in the dough or whatever.
Yeah. I've heard that's really good.
You know what? I've actually had my kids make it. It was fun for them to make, and everybody ate it. I mean, the crust is made out of cheese. I mean, it's amazing, actually. Like, oh, I'm sure that's good for you.
I'll take some.
Right? So, in the bigger picture here, so starting the ketogenic diet, you obviously are here tonight because you said, "Yep, I'm willing to do this." And as you step over the threshold for a ketogenic diet, the goal is to have you under 20 carbohydrates a day. Let's start with what food do you think you need to first? If we say let's eliminate this first to get your carbs down, what do you think that would be?
That's a tough one. Probably the potatoes. You know, like
Yeah.
and potatoes, I'm putting like rice and everything in that category.
Okay. Yeah. The extras that are on the plate, right?
Yeah.
So, I look at some of the goals that I'd like. We hope to do this every week. We're going to check in on Sundays and have a section for updates with Lachlyn. I think you'll provide lots of teachable moments. Woo woo. Yes. And in the interim, I will put links in the show notes below for folks to follow you, just to be able to say how you doing on your sugars and where are you at with your ketones. Let's do a couple other tools. Do you have a ketone monitor yet?
Negative.
Negative. Okay, so I will be making a house call, dropping off a ketone monitor.
Dr. Bob's makes a house visit.
We're gonna check your cupboards, girl. You better get the trash bag out.
Oh boy. Okay.
Okay. You'll
I'll get rid of it tonight by throwing it away.
You know, that's what accountability is for. That's what accountability is for.
Okay.
So the key here is that you can get away with checking urine ketones when you are not type 1 diabetic. But as a type 1, I need you to check your blood ketones. I need to know how well they're, if you're making them, and how well you're doing. I'll probably drop off some goodies just to make sure that you're set for success as well. So we will take a look at that. Folks, a couple things before we sign off here. I do want you to encourage Lachlyn. This is really brave of her. Starting a ketogenic diet, if you've tried this, is difficult. And she's doing this in a setting where, she's a type 1 diabetic and she's had some struggles with how do you keep this controlled. I would do all that you can to support her as we do this and thank her for providing multiple teachable moments for how to screw up a ketogenic diet and how to do it right. Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I'm sure this will not be boring. I'm afraid of it, actually. Well, so I'm trying to keep this to a 20 to 30 minute and not get too long or rambling. What we hope to do every week is to get an update from Lachlyn and then maybe find something that it is questions and answers coming from the crowd. I'm still getting better at being producer, talking head, educator, doctor, all in one little body here. So if you've typed in messages throughout this live, I'm sorry I haven't got to those yet, but I will get better at doing that. Post your questions though, because I'll use them next week. It is incredible how much we can learn from a story like Lachlyn's, and just to encourage her and to be a good example for what she's got for imprinting to those teenage boys at home. All right. Got anything else you want to say as we launch into this adventure, Lachlyn?
I'm assuming probably nobody on here probably has really met Dr. Boz, or not very many.
Right?
Most haven't. I have. And I'm here to tell you guys, she's probably the smartest cookie I've ever met in my entire life, and she's amazing. So go and support Miss Dr. Boz too.
You're gonna make me cry.
She brought me all sorts of fun little things.
I did. I stopped up and said,
look how cute she is. She had her hair done the other day. So
yes.
So like all little good ways to do stuff. So support our friend, the doctor.
I love you, dear. All right. This is going to be great. We're going to have fun. There's never a boring moment when Lachlyn's around. All right. We're signing off. Bye. Thank you, guys.